Welcome back to my vegan low FODMAP GOS challenge week. Today's episode features Wednesday and day 1 of my GOS challenge. Over the coming weeks you'll be able to see all of my recipes and what I ate, so be sure to click subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Breakfast was mushrooms and avocado on gluten-free toast. You can see how I prepare these FODMAP friendly tin mushrooms in the Tuesday episode from this series. I dry fried the prepared mushrooms for about 2 minutes on medium heat in a non-stick pan. Add 1 tablespoon of soya sauce or gluten-free tamari. This helps to stop the mushrooms from sticking and gives a deep umami flavour. Add 1 tablespoon of tomato puree and stir well to coat the mushrooms evenly. Whilst the mushrooms are cooking, add 1/8 of a ripe avocado to a bowl. I know it seems like a pathetic portion, but as vegan low FODMAPers, it's important we eat the widest variety of plant foods available, even if some of the portions are tiny. Mash the avocado with a fork or spoon into a smooth paste. Add 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast and stir well to get rid of the gritty texture. If your avocado is fully ripe, you should find that the yeast blends and absorbs well. Add a few drops of raw apple cider vinegar for a little bit of sharpness and to cut through the cheesiness of the nutritional yeast. The mushrooms will take about 10 minutes on medium heat. You can add a few splashes of water to stop them from sticking if you need to. If you can tolerate it, I like to add 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard. I use the Monash approved sharp panini rolls. Once the avocado is nicely mashed, you'll find that 1/8 is just enough to spread thinly on 2 slices of toast. Top the avocado with the fried mushrooms. Half a cup or 110 grams is the acceptable low FODMAP portion. For my GOS challenge, I chose to test peas. This is because, unlike some other legumes, I haven't eaten them since my elimination phase and I've been missing including them in meals. It's really important to accurately measure your portions for each day of the challenge. On day 1, it's 2 tablespoons, which is not a huge amount. I personally think the sensible thing to do is create separate recipes for each day of the challenge. At this point, you don't know how you're going to react to the challenge food, and there's a possibility you may need to stop the challenge altogether after day 1. In the interests of minimising food waste, make each portion a day at a time. To keep things tasty and simple, I incorporated my portion into some leftover low FODMAP kale pesto. The peas made a great addition to this fresh and citrusy pesto, and you can find the full recipe in the Monday video of this series. I think a pestle and mortar is an essential low FODMAP kitchen tool, not only for blending ingredients, but also for making sure that none of the all-important challenge food is wasted or left behind, which can often happen when using a food processor. Obviously, the pesto itself is not a main meal, so I added 1 cup of plain quinoa, which I batch cooked earlier in the week. It takes a few minutes of stirring to fully incorporate the pesto and quinoa, but it's definitely worth the effort. I kept the rest of the meal low FODMAP and served the quinoa with a simple lettuce and radish salad. I really hope that if you find yourself in FODMAP limbo or you've been putting off tackling your challenges, that this recipe encourages and inspires you to move forward. As you can see, with a bit of careful planning and meal prep, it really doesn't have to be complicated. By batch cooking the bulk of this meal beforehand and incorporating the challenge food on the day, this delicious meal can be put together in a matter of minutes, allowing challenge day to be as stress-free as possible, which is an important factor throughout your FODMAP challenges. So before I start on tea, I want to prep the tofu bacon for tomorrow, so I can use any of the leftover marinade to flavour tonight's evening meal. To marinate 200 grams of tofu, I used 1 tablespoon of toasted sesame oil, 1 tablespoon of soya sauce or wheat-free tamari if you prefer, about half a teaspoon of liquid smoke, a little bit really does go a long way, 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard, 1 tablespoon of tomato puree, a grind of barbecue seasoning and 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. Whisk it really vigorously to blend everything together. After a quick taste, I decided it needed something sweet to balance out the salt and smoke, so I used 1 tablespoon of pure maple syrup. Cut the tofu into 5mm slices and lay them out in a shallow tub large enough so they don't overlap, and pour over the marinade. Spread the marinade to generously cover each slice of tofu. Flip each piece of tofu over several times back and forth to make sure both sides are evenly marinated. This seems like a bit of a fiddly messy job, but makes a huge difference to the finished tofu. I also like to do this a couple of times whilst marinating to get the tofu as juicy and flavourful as possible. Cover with a lid and leave in the fridge overnight. If you're all familiar with this channel, you'll know I've got a waste not want not approach to cooking, so these leftover dregs of marinade will be used to flavour the tofu for tonight's tea. In fact, I've no shame in admitting that pretty much the whole meal for Wednesday night was made up of leftovers from the previous 2 days. The leftover smoky marinade is going to be used as the base flavour for tonight's tofu burrito. The veggie element is going to come from a small portion of Monday's leftover ratatouille. To bulk it out, I threw in the other half of the rice from Tuesday. And because you can never have too many carbs, I added some diced leftover jacket potato. The main protein element of this meal comes from the other half of the block of tofu. These corn tortillas are the only thing that's not a leftover, but you'll see the rest of those used tomorrow and Friday. I have at least 1 or 2 meals like this a week. Not only are they so quick and easy to throw together, but they eliminate food waste, which massively reduces your food bills in the long term. This type of meal is only really possible when you've done a lot of the planning and invested your time at the beginning of the week by preparing a detailed meal plan and shopped accordingly. Had I not planned for these leftovers, we would have bought an extra meal's worth of excess fresh food that could potentially spoil or go to waste. You can see if this was to regularly happen multiple times a week in multiple people households, the impacts to your time, budget and ultimately the environment are going to quickly mount up. The smoky tofu scramble mixture was fried in garlic oil for about 10 minutes until everything was hot. Burritos are an excellent filling way to use up leftovers. No recipe required, just throw everything in and hope for the best. Adding in some fresh herbs and veggies towards the end of cooking can really transform your leftovers into what feels like a brand new meal. I prefer my tortilla wraps warm, so I heat them in a dry non-stick pan for about 30 seconds each side. And this is the part of the video where you should completely ignore everything I'm doing. I'm so greedy that I always overfill the tortilla wrap and end up really struggling to roll, cut and eat it with any shred of dignity. Make sure your tortilla wraps are 100% corn, as many are a mixture of wheat and corn. Usually the pure corn wraps have a yellower colour, but it's always safer to double check. And believe it or not, my leftovers got leftovers, so I ate the rest as a burrito bowl. Let me know in the comments below if you plan on using the pea pesto recipe for your own GOS challenge. As always, thanks so much for watching and I'll speak to you soon.